Hello, Taurus risings. Welcome to our monthly zodiac reading for the month of November 2025. We have a jam-packed month, so we will not waste any time. We are going to pull an overall energy theme for the month for you guys. We are going to pull tarot for each week. We will clarify that with more tarot, as well as discuss the astrological transits, how that energy can kind of play out based upon what we're seeing on the table. And then we will wrap it up with some additional oracle guidance. So let's see what Taurus risings need to know for the month of November. Oh, well, all right then. First quarter moon in Sagittarius, believe in your own good luck. I love this because we are experiencing a full moon within your sign, like here in the first week of the month. So believe in your own good luck, right? You create your good luck, so to speak. Let's see. And we do have some energies showing up within Sagittarius this month. So I'm curious to see how that energy is going to play out as well. Sagittarius for you guys, it sits in your 8th house. The 8th house is a karmic house, right? It is kind of like inheritances. And sometimes we can inherit things that shouldn't really belong to us, beliefs, energies that shouldn't belong to us. You may even have this feeling like, oh, I'm cursed. These things always happen to me. But no, actually you're not, right? Good things can happen to you. So you're being encouraged to believe in your own good luck this month. So let's see what the tarot has to say. Here in this first week, we have the Page of Swords in reverse. So the Page of Swords in reverse can represent there's a lesson that's not being learned here, right? You may be experiencing something, thoughts, ideas, or maybe even experiencing conversations that you kind of experience on a regular basis. This is because the Page of Swords is about learning. And it could be that you're not learning your lesson when it comes to something, right? It can also represent miscommunication or messages being received that are somewhat deceptive, not necessarily completely true. And then there's also the possibility of gossip, right? You don't want to be involved in any sort of gossip that may be occurring. Whether it is you initiating it or whether it is some friends initiating it, we don't want to do that. We don't want to give ourselves to that energy, right? On the 4th, Mars, the planet of action, aggression, assertion, is moving into the sign of Sagittarius. This is your 8th house. So this is giving you a lot of drive, maybe even a lot of desire to transform your life. It could be that you're having a lot of desire to maybe explore occult topics, right? Because the 8th house are kind of like all of those taboo subjects that nobody really wants to talk about. Whether that's sex, death, taxes, inheritances, money, nobody really wants to talk about those things. They've been kind of considered taboo subjects. So it could be that maybe you are nervous to talk about something, but maybe Mars being in that house can give you the courage to do so. On the 5th is when we experience the full moon within your sign. And this is going to kind of touch on how you see yourself or maybe how you feel about yourself. Full moons are a buildup of energy. They are a heightened sense of emotions. And those emotions are essentially shining light on the things, maybe for you guys, where you feel really good about yourselves and maybe where you don't feel really good about yourselves. So it could be that there is this belief that's coming up around, like I said, again, not feeling like, almost feels like negative self-talk, right? Negative self-talk even. So that is happening on the 5th. On the 6th, Venus is moving into the sign of Scorpio. So for you guys, Scorpio sits in your 7th house. Venus moving into your 7th house, you could feel much more committed, much more appreciative of your long-term long-term commitments, maybe long-term relationships, marriage, even like your spouse, just maybe a little bit more willing to be a little bit more passionate and, again, seeing more about what you value within your most intimate life. Now on the 8th, Uranus has been retrograde, and he's retrograding back towards your first house. So you will have to eventually revisit some of these kind of shocking or chaotic events. But it could be that there's something that, and maybe with Uranus retrograding kind of back into your sign, maybe there are things you need to say. Maybe there are lessons that you haven't learned. So with Uranus being back in, creeping back towards your sign, you're kind of being prompted to do so. Here in the second week, Mercury is going to station direct the 5 of Swords. So Mercury is going to station direct or station retrograde within the sign of Sagittarius. So again, this is your 8th house. It could be that there are disagreements over things like shared finances. If you are married, the 8th house governs things like shared finances, money, right? It could be that there are a lot of disagreements around that type of conversation. I know you guys, especially risings, like you guys have the tendency to be very mindful about how you spend your time, how you spend your money. But ultimately, it could be that there is just a lot of tension, maybe even verbal disagreements when it comes to that particular subject. Mercury, when it goes retrograde, Mercury is the planet of thoughts, ideas, communication, short distance travel. When that happens, it could be that there are setbacks, there are delays, or there's just miscommunication when it comes to certain topics. And for you guys, again, this is shared resources. Jupiter on the 11th, Jupiter is going to be stationing retrograde within the sign of Cancer. Cancer sits in your 3rd house. This is your house of thinking and communication, but it's also about emotional attachment and emotional safety, right? If maybe you feel emotionally safer when people discuss things with you, when you're able to feel seen and heard. And if you're not feeling that, if that energy is being projected more inward than it is outward, you could feel like you're not seen and heard, and it could cause some, emotional, mental, verbal upsets, so to speak. Here in the 3rd week, the Knight of Pentacles in reverse. So the Knight of Pentacles in reverse can represent procrastination. Now, with you guys, you could be wanting to have a conversation with someone and really be hesitant to do so. It could be causing a lot of conflict. Like maybe you're feeling a little guilty about the conversation that you need to have, and then you could be putting it off with the Knight of Pentacles in reverse. This is the week that we are experiencing the new moon within the sign of Scorpio. Again, this is your 7th house. This is the house of business contracts, marriage contracts, long-term romantic relationships, and even long-term commitments. So it could be that their new moons are a new opportunity to set intentions. So there's a new opportunity maybe to, instead of procrastinating something, just kind of take it, just be deliberate and intentional, keep it simple, and to just take those steps towards taking action towards what you think needs to occur, right? That's happening on the 20th. This is the same day that we will have a Mercury and Sun cazimi. If you've had readings with me, you know what a cazimi is, or I've explained it to you before. For those of you who do not, a cazimi happens anytime a planet essentially crosses paths with the sun and will sit almost essentially on top of the sun or directly in front of the sun. This transit is kind of like in the heart of the sun, and the sun's energy is going to illuminate and is going to amplify the traits and themes of that planet. Again, this is Mercury, so it's amplifying these themes. It is happening within the sign of Scorpio, so again, activating your 7th house. It could be that or let me go back to the cazimi. The sun is illuminating things, but these aha moments, this clarity, this aha moment, this burst of ideas or thoughts is only going to come from within because the energy is retrograde. It's not going to come from an external source. It will only come from within. And it could mean that maybe you've promised somebody you're going to take action towards this long-term commitment. Maybe go to marriage counseling or get better at finances, whatever the case may be. You've maybe made a commitment, but you're procrastinating on starting. This Cazimi and the new moon might be able to give you the courage and the clarity you need to be able to take those steps forward. Here in the last week, the Tower. So the Tower can be unexpected change, but it can also be things like revelation or revolution, right? It's essentially something that comes in that we're able to see clearly, and it can kind of, again, this can either be physical change or it can be sudden, like I said, sudden change. With the Cazimi happening, the new moon happening in your 7th house, Mercury will be going direct this week in your 7th house. So this could be a lot of clarity that comes through. A lot of clarity that's going to come in, and it's going to kind of shake things up for you. It's going to be something unexpected. Maybe you received news that you didn't really expect. But definitely it's going to ultimately kind of shake things up for you. That's on the 29th. On the 28th, Saturn is going to be stationing retrograde or stationing direct within your within the sign of Pisces. So Saturn is boundaries, restrictions, it is limitations. It's known as the taskmaster, and it's also about time. Your 11th house is your future aspirations. Saturn and Mercury both going direct. Something could come in. It feels like this burst of clarity or this burst of understanding that if you want to move forward in your life, you're going to have to take a risk. That's kind of how this feels, right? And on the 30th, we have Venus moving into the sign of Sagittarius. Again, Sagittarius being your 8th house of shared resources. Maybe you guys, something happens and it's kind of like this burst of good news. Just because we see the Tower moment does not necessarily mean that it is a bad thing. It could be this like new opportunity. It could be a new maybe receiving something that you weren't quite expecting, and it could really change the game for you. So I just want to throw that out there, that just because the Tower is an unexpected moment that shifts the game does not mean that it's always bad. Okay, let's see. And look, believe in your own good luck. Believe if you are consistently thinking, this doesn't turn out this way for me, I have to always work hard to get something, I have to, whatever this is, it feels more like a belief, right? This is a belief. This is this internal narrative that you've been carrying around for a very, very long time, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it reflects reality. It's almost like your perception of reality, right? So you want to make sure that you believe in your own good luck. So for you guys, your 7th and your 8th house are being activated heavily this month. And it's really going to shift maybe how you see the world. Let's see what Taurus needs to know. Here in the first week, the Page of Swords, Judgment in reverse, and the 5 of Swords in reverse. So yeah, it definitely feels like the Page of Swords is there, and it's like you're not learning from this lesson. Maybe you're not able to see things clearly, and it's because there's this fear that's coming up, this fear of the unknown, and it's coming from this sort of internal conflict, right? This internal conflict that's like, I can't do this. This feels very much like a belief system, right? And it could be something that you verbalize out loud. You tell people that bad things are going to happen, and you feel it in your bones because you genuinely believe it. But the thing about belief is that belief does create our reality for better or for worse. So if you can switch that, you can believe in your own good luck. Now, this can also represent maybe feeling judged by someone, like maybe receiving a message a communication from someone that you don't appreciate and you feel very judged by them, right? You feel very judged by them, and it can invoke this sense of guilt or this sense of grief or this internal conflict. So just be mindful about that, okay? Especially around the full moon. It could feel like the full moon, it's heightening energies, but it could feel like there's this projection onto you. If that is the case, do your best. Look, the more we regulate our own emotions, the easier it becomes for us to not take things personally. The more we regulate our own emotions, the more we regulate our nervous system, the less likely we are to feel like we have to defend ourselves. We can actually begin to respond more than we react. Okay? So just be mindful that if conversations or tensions arise between you and another person, maybe you and a spouse, just be mindful that you can respond versus react, and you're not responsible for the actions, the words, or the thoughts of others. All you can do is own your stuff. All you can do is own how you handle things. You can't own what they do. All right? You don't try not to internalize it, because it's more of a reflection of them versus you, because like I said, it feels like a projection. But like I said, it could be communication. Somebody says something to you, it makes you feel very, very judged, and it could bring up a lot of guilt. All right, which can roll over. And if you sit on that guilt, if you allow it to kind of build up and bubble and simmer, it could turn into a full-blown argument here when Mercury goes retrograde. And again, this is happening within your 8th house. So this is maybe about shared finances. This could be with people you're close to, people you are going to ultimately have to, it feels like you've got a really close bond, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a spouse. This could be a sibling. This could be about, what am I trying to say? It doesn't feel, because there's no specific indicator. Is this about money? Is this about love? Is that, you know what I mean? Is this about something else? This is more, it feels just genuinely like a lot of miscommunication and projection onto a different person, whether that is coming from you or whether that is coming from them. The projection, due to some sort of like shared energy or a shared history with this person, it's kind of like this clash. And because of this clash, neither person is able to see things clearly. That's kind of how this energy feels. It's the only way I know to describe it. The 5 of Swords, King of Swords in reverse, and the Ace of Swords. Okay, so look, there's an opportunity here to, again, communicate very clearly. However, you cannot, it can feel like you win this argument. It could feel like you've one-upped someone. But if you've used mental or emotional manipulation to do so, you haven't won anything, right? This is an opportunity for you this week to communicate clearly, to really think about what it is that you want to say before you say it, okay? Because the Ace of Swords is here. There's an opportunity for clarity. There's an opportunity for a new idea. There's an opportunity for new communication. But if you're feeling real feisty, if you're feeling like you want to say things just to hurt that person, you need to check yourself before you do that. You definitely need to check yourself before you do that. All right. And again, Jupiter is also stationing retrograde within the sign of Cancer. So this is a lot about communication. Again, this could be about siblings, communicating with siblings, since Cancer is going retrograde within the 3rd house, or it could be with a spouse or just someone that you're very, very close to. Like I said, someone you've got a history with. I know that feels very specific, but that's just what it feels like to me. A broader explanation is that, yeah, again, I feel like somebody says something to you here in this first week and you get real bent out of shape about it. You can get real bent out of shape about it, but it's because this narrative keeps repeating in your own head. This repeating thought. It's almost like you're allowing it, like I said, to just marinate and simmer. And as a result, the longer it simmers, the more this tension begins to build, right? And so here in this second week, you could kind of lash out unintentionally. But the King of Swords in reverse is like a lot of anxiety. There is a lot of worry, and there's not a lot of mental discipline. So what you can do, you know that you need to have a hard and challenging conversation with the Five of Swords. You know that. But you have an opportunity to do so clearly. And in order to do that, like I was saying with the first week, the more we regulate our emotions, the more we regulate our own nervous system, the more likely we are to be able to have a clear and direct communication with someone without it getting hostile or nasty. Here in the third week, the Knight of Pentacles in reverse, again, maybe putting off, procrastinating. Strength in reverse, and the Ten of Cups. So this is the first cups that I've seen come out. And again, what week's new moon in Scorpio, this is your 7th house. There's an opportunity to feel this love and this deep connection with a long-term committed partner. There is this opportunity to feel this love and this deep connection and this happiness with someone in your life. But you're doubting that that's even possible. And maybe because you're doubting that that's even possible, you're procrastinating even taking action towards that. You're procrastinating because you don't have faith in your own good luck. Maybe you don't feel like you are lovable. Maybe you don't believe that you are worthy of being loved. But that's not true. That's not true. You know that. Deep down, I hope that you know that that's not true. Right? But I definitely feel like there's this resistance to take action towards your own happiness just because it's almost like you feel more comfortable in your own misery. That feels more familiar. That feels more comfortable to you. So you're more comfortable there. And it's hard for you to believe in your own good luck. Here in the fourth week, Tower, the Nine of Swords. Man, y'all are in your head this month. Whew. There's a lot of self-criticism that's happening. There's a lot of self-criticism. Or there's just a lot of criticism towards someone else in general. But I think it's because you feel very critical to yourself, because here we've got the Eight of Swords in reverse. We also have the Nine of Swords and this Tower card. This unexpected, it almost feels like this just combination of anxiety. It's a lot of anxiety. A lot of anxiety. And it's creating a lot of worry. It's creating a lot of like sleepless nights. And the thing about the Eight of Swords represents our own self-imprisonment, right? She feels imprisoned, but it's the reflection of her in the mirror is herself. She is her own prisoner. She is her own, gosh, what's the word? It's right there on the tip of my tongue. But like she's the guard of her own prison. She has the keys. She could let herself out. And typically when we see this card in reverse, it can mean that we've let ourselves out, but based on the other two cards, I don't think that that's what that means. I think that it feels like self-criticism, or maybe you consistently feel criticized by others because this is a reflection of you being overly critical of yourself. So you're like, this person is always criticizing me, when in reality, that's a reflection. You're projecting that onto another person because you're very critical of yourself. You are very hard on yourself, and you don't need to be. You're human. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. And maybe you realize that. Maybe that's what the Tower is. That's what this realization is, this revelation is. This sudden burst of knowledge with the all-seeing eye. Let's see. It's weird. Oh, they were like stuck together. I was like, why does this card feel weird? Grieve your losses. There's something that you're hanging on to. Like I said, it feels like a belief system, and a lot of this tension that you feel with other people, it's a projection of how you feel about you. And it's coming from somewhere. It could be a seed that somebody planted in your brain a long, long, long time ago. But you need to let go of that. You need to, if you have done something, look, I've been telling people lately, I heard it in a book, I heard it in the book Divergent. And it was so profound, and it's something that I've always kind of used, but they articulated it so beautifully. And it was essentially like, if you feel guilty about something, you need to let that guilt be the guiding light on how to do better. Instead of holding on to that guilt and allowing it to turn into shame, allow anything that you feel guilty about to show you the way to do better, to show you the way to be better. That's kind of how I've used it. I feel so like I've felt guilty about things in my past, and I never want to feel guilty like that again. So I use that guilt as fuel to know what not to do. If something makes me feel guilty, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. It's as simple as that. If something is going to make me feel guilty or crappy about myself, I won't come near it with a 10-foot pole. I'm just not going to. Right? So it could be that you need to grieve this loss of who you thought you were supposed to be. Maybe accept some of the things that you've done, and accept this feeling of how you judge yourself, and maybe how your actions have caused other people to see you, and allow it to go. Like, just roll with it. Allow it to wash over you like a wave, but don't hold on to it. Allow it to be your guiding light, because you're not the same person that you were. You made a choice then based on the amount of awareness that you had. You felt the repercussions of that choice. You learned, you grew, you evolved. Chances are, being presented with that same option again, you wouldn't choose the same choice. So you need to let it go. Here in the second week, speak up. Do not hold on to your words. Don't use them to hurt others either, with the King of Swords in reverse. But don't hold on to them either. Yes, the conversation you need to have with somebody is very, very challenging. It's very uncomfortable. But there's an opportunity for growth here if you believe that, okay, if I just approach this person about this subject, it might actually turn out better than what I think it will. If I say what I need to say, it might turn out better than what I think it will. Right? Here in the third week, make a plan. If you want this happy ending, you have to stop putting this off. Again, the Knight of Pentacles, procrastination is typically tied to fear. My therapist taught me that. It's typically tied to some sort of fear. For you, this fear is doubt. You doubt that that is actually possible for you, that these feelings of connection and joy and fulfillment and purpose are even possible for you. You doubt that. And as a result, you take no action towards those things. You don't even plan for them because you're like, well, it's not possible anyway, so what's the point? But it is possible. It is possible if you believe that it's possible. So make a plan. If you want happiness, if you want to feel purpose in your life, if you want to feel that connection with people closest to you, make a plan on how to do that. And then I genuinely think you'll be surprised at your own good luck. Accept what is dying. Things are changing and you cannot hold on to them. Whether that is you are changing, whether that is just you're getting to a point in your life where things are evolving. Things are going to change one way or another. And you holding on to that, you trying to hold on to the way things were or the way things should be, you holding on to your own past, to your own guilt, to your own shame, you holding on to the blame of someone else, that's not going to serve you anymore. It's not going to serve you anymore. And the universe is trying to shove you in the direction of growth, evolution, and I genuinely think happiness and contentment. So you need to accept what is dying, even if that old version of yourself is what is dying. You don't have to hold on to it. Right? So I truly hope this helped. This feels like a very intense month, and it's not shocking with a lot of the 8th house stuff that you're going through. But it does feel like a very intense month, but there's a lot of opportunity for personal growth. And it feels like shedding, like just shedding this old layer of skin. Well, kind of like a snake sheds its skin. You're just kind of shedding and you're coming out newer, and there's an opportunity to come out newer and as a more evolved person, a more transformed person, so to speak. So I truly hope this helped, and I hope you have an incredible month.